The Elements of Friendship, Book 1, Harmony, by Armas Fegeland. Chapter 3, Nighttime Eternal. Canterlot was on edge. The bourgeoisie has been privy to the sun celebration within Canterlot and in many of the more celebrated locales around Equestria: Cloudsdale, Vancouver, Philadelphia, Las Pegasus, Salt Lake City, Manhattan, Baltimore. So to repeat the celebration in a Surf village was not acceptable. Their presentriness might be contagious, but when the sun did not rise at the anticipated time, they began to fear the worst. Queen Celestia had tasted too much commoner food and taken to becoming a serf herself, neglecting her royal duty to raise the sun. The royal guard entered high alert, the day guard and night guard putting all their time into quelling the fears of nobles who panicked at the idea that even the queen would be assimilated by the plebeians. They feared, as all in power do, the uprising of the rabble against them. It took the better part of 8 hours to calm the hollering masses of noble mares and noble stallions, but all that the royal guard had truly done was put a cap into the boiling pot. When a cloud of starry mist streamed from the city and from Saddle Valley below, many nobles began to panic anew. This was some eldritch magic of the masses, come to drag the rich down to their level. It streamed up Main Street, up to the gates of the castle of the Queen, where it began to coalesce into a single solid form, a towering Alicorn with a pitch-black coat, her feathered bat wings unfurled ominously at her sides, her misty mane and tail billowing out behind her. The aura she projected upon the nobles sent them groveling to their knees. And when she spoke, it was with the echoing voice of a legion that carried to the very foundations of Canterlot. "Subjects of the sun, I have returned from my forced slumber in the night sky. The tyrant Celestia has been overthrown, banished to her side for all time. I am your new queen in this realm of eternal night, Nightmare Moon!" The diminished spirits of the nobles had been rekindled. This was a subject of fear to their cults and fillies. "And if you don't do as you're told, the Nightmare Moon, the mare of the shadows, will gobble you up." And then to themselves when they were colts and fillies. As quailed as they were at the prospect of the rabble pulling them down, the idea of Nightmare Moon slipping down and out of their worst nightmares aroused a spirit of vigor in them. They began to gallop toward the main gate, trying to save their own hides, but were waylaid by bolts of lightning, which cowed them into quivering wrecks. "You cannot run from my everlasting dominion of night!" called Nightmare Moon. A bright pink glimmer beam shot by Nightmare Moon's head, blasting a hole through her starry mane. The blasted hole quickly sealed itself, and the black Alicorn narrowed her eyes at the main square. Standing there in defiance, pawing at the ground, his Alicorn lit up a bright pink, was Canterlot's captain of the royal guard. He was a unicorn stallion, tall and broad at the withers, with a sapphire mane that was ordinarily streaked cerulean and dark blue to either side of his horn, but which was concealed by his guard pony's helmet. His cutie mark was hidden by his barrel-laced golden armor. "Every pony stay calm!" he barked to the quivering nobles around the square. "We can stand against her!" His throat began to glow with pink itself, and when he spoke, it was with a voice 10 times the volume. "All personnel of the royal guard, rally to me before the castle of the Queen!" Within moments, scores of royal guard of every race answered their captain's call. Pegasi of the day guard soared in through the gaps between minarets. Unicorns winked out to their captain's side, and earth ponies galloped with enhanced speed under geokinetic magic. Along with the Pegasi glided the night guard, all members of which were an offshoot of the Pegasi race, a bat pony. Bat ponies had bat wings instead of feathered wings, tail fins in place of tail feathers, leonine tails unlike the unicorns, slitted cat pupils, and fangs for puncturing fruits. They had an exclusively liquid diet. Nightmare Moon arched an eyebrow at the sight before her of the captain of the royal guard at the head of his army of hundreds of gold-class royal guard. "You foes!" she hissed, a blinding cyan glimmer beam lancing out from her Alicorn at the captain. In a flash, his horn lit up. a bright pink Dwemer shield appearing before him and his fellow guard's pony. The Dwemer beam arcing violently off the shield and striking the tiled roofs of the surrounding buildings, shattering tiles and sending charred fragments to the streets below. Nightmare Moon's Alicorn dimmed in moments, her arrowed eyes upon the royal guard in its entirety. "I ask you, Captain," she said with a devilish grin, "how can you and your troops stand against me?" Her mane and tail swelled to massive proportions, before fragments split off, descending upon the royal guard like a fine mist. "When you can't even stand against yourselves." The captain braced himself for some dark magic of Nightmare Moon's, but whatever it was had no effect upon him whatsoever. It bolted. He pawed dangerously at the cobbled stone with a forehoof. "You can't intimidate us with your theatrics, Nightmare," he snarled. "To our men!" Two pairs of forelegs restrained the captain's forearms, and he looked back and forth in dismay. A unicorn day guard and night guard had blank looks on their faces, the whites of their eyes glimmering with a faint pale blue light. They were holding him back, and behind them he could see several more day and night guards had fallen victim to Nightmare Moon's hex as well. The two factions of the royal guard were themselves split in twain, to the point where the divisions of day guard and night guard meant nothing. Free-minded and enslaved were nearer the mark. "It would seem that some of your royal guard are weak-willed enough to submit to my hypnosis," hissed Nightmare Moon, who had appeared directly before the captive captain, a savage grin on her muzzle. The captain struggled against the grip that his fellow guard ponies had upon him, but to no avail. He considered winking out, but decided he would rather not chance winking himself out all over Canterlot. "Police! Phoenix! Equalize! Snap out of it!" the captain called desperately. "It's me, your captain, your friend, Shining Armor!" "We must obey the Night Queen," they said in flat, droning voices. Nightmare Moon let out a triumphant cackle. "Ha ha 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 ha!" Lightning leaping from minaret to minaret above the main square. Captain Shining Armor's ears dropped at defeat. Her laughter spent, the dark Alicorn conqueror lowered her head to his level. "As the olden Commander Hurricane would have said." Nightmare Moon was almost on top of Shining Armor, her snake tongue flickering between her front fangs. She took in a deep hissing breath, leaned into Shining Armor's right ear, and almost whispered into it, her tongue dancing at the edge of his outer ear. "Divide and rule." Thus ended Nightmare Moon's conquest of Canterlot. The world was blackness, and Twilight Sparkle floundered about in the lightless void, shapeless. Muffled voices echoed around her, as she reached out with formless appendages, trying to grasp at the source of those conversing voices. She had no clue of what they were discussing, or if those voices even existed outside of Twilight's own head. She even wondered if her own head had even existed, or if she was just some strange collection of barely collected synapses in the monolay lines that swept Harmonia. In time, Twilight came to realize that she herself existed in a physical form, and her body began to ache all over, her Alicorn feeling as though it would split down the middle. Despite the pain, she felt heaven upon her back. With the pain came memory, and she bolt right up. "Nightmare Moon!" she shrieked, her voice sounding hoarse, her eyes squinting at the white light that encompassed her. Her forehoofs came back up, blocking her eyes. "Twilight Sparkle!" snapped a sweet but firm voice, as a hoof gently eased her back down. "You've been badly injured in the forest. You must rest until you've recovered." Blinking the light out of her eyes, Twilight made out a slender earth pony mare, with a white coat and pale pink mane tied back in a bun. She wore a nursing cap emblazoned with her cutie mark, a red cross with a pink heart pointing toward the direction of each indentation. Her blue eyes were shadowed, as though she had not slept in a good long while. As her vision adjusted to the light, she realized she was in a hospital room, with faded green walls and bright white chandeliers and recessed rectangles in the ceiling. Twilight heard a faint beep every 1.5 seconds, in time with her heartbeat. With a slight start, The nurse mare glanced at something out of Twilight's field of vision and beckoned over. A silhouette of a unicorn doctor appeared behind the curtains to the left of her bed, and the nurse addressed him.
Tell the visitors in the waiting room that Twilight Sparkle has come too. They must have heard the scream.
The doctor nodded, retreating back out of view. The nurse looked down at Twilight with a soft smile, and Twilight weakly tried to return it.
Try not to overexert yourself, dear. You've been through an awful lot, and even though you've been out for a good while, you still need your rest. Ugh, where am I?
Twilight asked wearily.
You're at Ponyville, General,
replied the nurse.
My name is Nurse Redheart, and I've been caring for you these past—
Mom! Cried a small boyish voice to Twilight's left. Looking over, her heart soared at seeing Spike, running over his short hind legs. His ordinarily slitted pupils were almost round, taking up much of his visible eyes, tears running down his scaly face. With a great leap, for Spike, he reached Twilight's bedside, claws wrapping around Twilight's bandaged left foreleg. Twilight smiled at him. She was in no mood to ruin Spike's by concentrating him, but she brought her other foreleg around to wipe his tears away.
I'm okay, Spike. Really, I am.
Spike sniffled, smiling at Twilight. These guys. Didn't I say you should make some friends? With a hesitant glance, Twilight looked up at the 5 who trotted into the room behind Spike. The same 5 mares who had followed her into Everfree Forest were there with her, each giving her a tentative, nervous look. Twilight had a lot of questions, but she could not ask each question at once.
How long was I out?
Go on about 2 days now, Sugar Cube, replied Applejack. Twilight felt her heart in her throat.
And how are my parents?
The 5 mares looked back and forth between each other, and Twilight felt a bolt of panic shoot through her heart. What had happened to them?
Well, you have to understand, Twilight,
began Rarity,
that Nightmare Moon did not take kindly to your little sunspell. But when she tried to dispel it, she just went pew 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 pew, and your son just went like
Piggy suddenly sang, pronking about the room. Nurse Redheart took a step back to avoid the bouncing party mare. Twilight raised an eyebrow, her head aching worse than ever, rubbing one of her ears with a forehoof. Translation, please! Nightmare Moon tried to blast your mini-sun out of the sky, Rainbow Dash said loudly, flapping into the air, but her glimmer beams didn't do a thing to it! She was like getting seriously ticked off! Eventually, she gave up and went towards Canterlot. Twilight wondered at this unexpected news. How in Harmonia did Nightmare Moon not have the power to dispel her heliogenesis spell? Maybe it was because Nightmare Moon had only re-emerged from the moon just hours before. We moved your parents to the walkway around Town Hall, so to get more sun and all, Applejack added. At least the Pony villagers took up the call to warn them whenever they passed by. They've already accepted you as well their own. Looking around at each of her sincerely concerned faces, a relieved Twilight could not bear to tell them what was really on her mind, and instead resorted to asking another question. How did she get me out? Silence greeted Twilight's query, as her companions gathered their thoughts. It was Rarity who spoke up first.
Now, darling, you were quite unconscious when we found you in that meeting hall,
she explained.
The wall was blasted out, and the elements were missing.
The elements! Twilight bolted up, despite Nurse Redheart's protestations. Please tell me that the elements weren't destroyed. 4 mares, in spite, looked back and forth at one another in confusion, while Pinky smiled.
Nope, no elements, Twilight, but I did find some really great rocks to make rock necklaces for my sisters.
From out of nowhere, Pinky produced several shards of surprisingly light stones. They were once 5 spears engraved with unseen symbols. Pinky had collected the shattered elements of harmony. Those are the elements! Twilight shouted, before grasping her head and grunting a pen.
Please, don't push yourself,
Nurse Redheart said sharply, pushing Twilight back down onto the pillow. Twilight moaned in distress, rubbing her alicorn sorely. She absolutely noted that her head was bandaged as well, her forelock pulled up and tied with a hairband around her horn, before continuing. Okay, so, you found me and the elements. Then what? Well,
did have a bit of a hassle getting back up the slope that the palace laid at the bottom of, but we managed. We got to the stream and then...
Rarity fell silent there.
And then...
Twilight pressed. That's when they showed up. Rainbow Dash finished darkly. The rumble of thunder drew 5 pairs of eyes up from the stream to the sky. Streaks of storm clouds bolted through the sky, but Rainbow Dash felt that these could not be the Wonderbolts. The storm cloud trails were too dark for that team of flyers. When the 3 dark Pegasi landed directly across the crocodile stream from them, she knew that these were not the Wonderbolts. Their flight suits were a deep dark purple, with dark gray hoods over their heads, with holes cut out for their ears and manes, and dark gray forearms and cannons. Golden lightning bolts accentuated the boundaries. Their yellow-tinted goggles gave the impressions of perpetual glares. The flanks of their uniforms bore the mark of a winged pony skull. The mare at their lead had a rich blue windswept mane and tail, palest blue-gray coated wings, and a devilish grin. "In the name of the moon, you will not make it out of this forest," she called out, her wings flaring as she pawed the ground. "Says who?" countered Rainbow Dash, pawing at the ground herself, fangs bared. The Mark Wonderbolt darted at Rainbow Dash, who barely had time to react before being tackled into the air. Her attacker's muzzle was split into a maniacal grin, revealing a mouth of razor-sharp teeth and fangs. "Says I, Nightingale, Captain of the Shadowbolts." "The Shadowbolts?" Twilight echoed. "That's what she said they were called," Rainbow Dash affirmed. "I don't know who those copycats think they are, but they're stealing the Wonderbolt's thunder." "I think that's the whole point, Our Lady," Applejack cut in. "I'll wager they're a cult that sprung up and worship a Nightmare Moon around the time the Wonderbolts themselves were founded."
"So, how did you get past the Shadowbolts?"
Twilight pressed. A crack of lightning tore through the sky, and Nightingale suddenly drew away from Rainbow Dash. Shaking the stars out of her eyes, Rainbow Dash caught sight of the foe which appeared, and drew the attacks of Nightingale. "The Wonderbolts!" The advent of Spitfire, Soren, and Fleetfoot had brought the wrath of Nightingale and her 2 stallion cohorts to rest upon the Wonderbolts instead of the 5 escapees from the palace. Twilight resting unconscious across Applejack's strong back. 3 Wonderbolts did battle against the 3 Shadowbolts. The night sky dazzled with lightning under the moon. The bolts generated by the Wonderbolts sent white light dancing across the trees, while those produced by the Shadowbolts seemed to cast an unlight, diminishing all light save the moon's. As Spitfire's warm, golden flames lit the night sky, Nightingale produced white fire that chilled the blood to look at. Even Rainbow Dash's fangirling out for the Wonderbolts could not outlast her feelings of self-preservation in the light of the battle unfolding in the sky above the Everfree. She descended to the surface, facing her fellow pony villagers. "How the hey are we supposed to get back now?" "And then AJ bucked down a tree over the stream, and we walked across it," Rainbow Dash explained. "A few crocodiles tried to snap at us, but we managed to get across pretty safely." "We thought we'd have a tough time getting past the Timberwolves," Applejack said, "but one of the Wonderbolts, or one of them Shadowbolts, sent down a lightning bolt that set that part of Everfree ablaze. All manner of creatures ran about, trying to save their own skins. We just galloped straight for the ravine."
"The fire had weakened several of the trees just at the edge of the ravine, and we managed to cross one tree that had rather precariously set itself between the cliff faces," Rarity added.
"And then we brought you here."
Fluttershy finished, withdrawing behind her mane. Twilight closed her eyes, trying to sift through all this information. Her head was still hurting terribly after hitting it during her one-on-one battle with Nightmare Moon, and the influx of sudden information had not done her any favors. Still, these 5 had risked hide and hair to make sure she and the elements had returned safely to Ponyville.
"I'm grateful," she began slowly. "Really, I am grateful. I never would have made it out of there without you 5 there for me."
Spike and the 5 mares smiled at Twilight. Even Nurse Redheart, who had retreated toward the door during the tail of their trek out of the Everfree,
allowed a small smile to grace her soft features. But, Twilight added, and 6 pairs of eyes widened slightly. Rainbow Dash narrowed hers. If some ponies hadn't been trying to make friends with me all day long, or thrown a stupid little party that kept me from concentrating for a single nanosecond, I might have actually been able to do the research that I needed to do to figure out how to make these mega-forsaken elements of harmony actually work! As Twilight's trade progressed, the faces of each of her companions gradually changed. Spike's face showing heartbreak. Rarity and Applejack showed progressing guilt. Rainbow Dash's glower intensified. Fluttershy withdrew further and further behind her mane, and Pinkie Pie started to lose her color. Literally. Nurse Redheart accurately chose this moment to slip out the door and into the hospital hallway. If I could have just figured that out, the Nightmare Moon would have been out of all of our mains. But now, because nobody can take studying first, the elements are... Twilight realized she was crying. Her eyes trained on the shards of white rock laying at the side of her bed. Her chest rose and fell unevenly as the horrid truth began to sink in. The elements of harmony were gone, as was Queen Celestia. Nightmare Moon had won. The sun would never rise again. The world is doomed! Twilight sobbed, her ears flopping against the sides of her head, eyes clenched shut. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. As much as I appreciate your being so upfront with us and all that, hey, Rainbow Dash said flatly, flapping up to Twilight. You're being a bit of a nag. Twilight winced at Rainbow Dash's language.
Did you really?
Said a meek and soft voice, but Fluttershy was not speaking. Twilight realized with a start that the one who was talking was Pinkie Pie. She had no idea that the mare could speak so softly. But she wasn't pink right now. She was a pale blue. Her ears were completely slack against the sides of her head, and her mane and tail had lost much of their fuzz and became merely curly. Twilight could not imagine a sadder or more defeated-looking mare.
Did you really hate my party?
Pinkie whimpered, with quivering lips, tears leaking from her eyes. Twilight's mind could not process how Pinkie did some of the things she did, even in the short time they'd known each other. And right now, with how numb her mind was after being unconscious for 2 days straight, she did not want to deal with something like this. I wouldn't hate it, but that was no time for a party, she said weakly, treading softly in case he set Pinkie off even further. I needed to find out more about the elements of harmony, and now, if you'll be begging my pardon, darling, Verity added, adding a slight sarcastic edge to the word darling. I think it's a bit too soon to be considering this situation a hopeless one.
Really?
Pinkie asked hopefully, her slack mane and tail beginning to curl up and returning to a rosy hue again. Her tears ceased as the corners of her mouth turned up in a shadow of a smile.
Well, we may perhaps have a party that Twilight Sparkle here would find enjoyable, but I was thinking more along the lines of the elements.
Rarity gestured a cloven hoof at the element shards.
How do you know that they have lost their impotence just from being shattered? How were they created?
Well, Twilight sniffled.
Queen Celestia always hinted that she and the Queen of the Night had worked together to create the elements, but there you have it,
Rarity said, with a flourish of her hoof.
Perhaps the elements' physical vessels can be destroyed, but not the elements themselves. They are the greatest magic in Equestria, are they not?
A shot of hope blossomed in Twilight's chest. They are!
And they could not be unmade so easily, could they? Not when you put it like that. So, now that we can reasonably assume that these elements...
Rarity levitated the shards of one element in her periwinkle glimmer shimmer.
...are not so easily destructible, perhaps we could do some research in how to remake their vessels.
And make them usable again, Twilight declared, standing up on all fours atop the hospital bed. She must have been projecting such an aura of joy that Pinkie leapt into the air
and referred to her bright pink, joyous self once again with a joyous woohoo!
The elements are an immutable, thaumaturgical force, bound into the physical vessels by the queens of day and night,
Twilight explained very quickly.
If we can study the thaumaturgical properties of the elements themselves, then we can hypothesize how to best magically repair the vessels. And the only way to do that is...
Twilight rested on her haunches and clapped her forehead triumphantly.
Research trip!
Spike planted his claws on one of his face, and the four of the 5 mares, with Twilight, tilted their heads to the side.
Whee!
Pinky leapt into the air, licking her hose and floating in the air for a fraction of a second.
Can we start a pre-research trip party?
Twilight hesitated for a split second, then replied simply,
Sure, why not?
Pinky squealed with such high glee that Twilight half seriously pondered if she could raise the pitch too high for ponies to hear. So, by research trip, you mean leaving Ponyville? Applejack asked. For how long?
Well, that depends on how easily we can track down information on the elements of harmony.
Twilight explained.
Before we officially declare this research trip, I say we thoroughly scour Golden Oak's library and...
We? Rainbow Dash echoed. Whatever happened to the whole I work alone bit just now? I thought we'd just get in your way. Twilight huffed through her nose.
Like it or not, we have to work together, she said levelly, as much to herself and others. 7 pairs of eyes can scour an oak tree's worth of books faster than 2.
I pair up with Verity! Squeaked Spike, raising a claw eagerly.
Verity gave a ladylike chuckle.
Twilight laughed to herself, Pinky echoing it for no reason.
All right, Spike, but remember, we're looking for information on the elements of harmony. You can study anatomy later.
While Spike tilted an eyebrow in confusion, Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and Pinky let out uproarious whinnies of laughter. Rarity sniffed with disdain at such a colorful joke, though her muzzle did scrunch up somewhat, and Fluttershy withdrew behind her mane with a fierce blush. "Woo boy, Twilight!" choked Applejack between cavalls. "How do I know you told jokes last night?" "Talk about your off-color jokes," Rainbow Dash snorted.
You're worth a hoof and a half, Twilight.
Pinky snickered. Following Twilight's checkup the morning after, wherein the nurses and doctor found little they could do apart from insisting that Twilight Sparkle maintain an easygoing schedule and not strain herself, the 6 mares in the Dragon Cup found themselves on the dirt road streets of Ponyville under Nightmare Moon's Selenic rain. The shattered remains of the 5 elements were each kept in the saddlebags of Twilight's 5 companions. Even with Twilight's heliogenous spell, the sky was not as brightly lit as on a pre-Nightmare Moon day. It was only about as bright as day in the very small radius around the vicinity of the sun, quickly dropping off to dusk levels of darkness before it even reached the other side of the sky of the early morning sun. Still, it was warm enough, and that was what mattered most. Passing through the unpaved roads of Ponyville, the group of 7 met up with many mares, stallions, and foals, all of whom greeted and were greeted in turn by Twilight's companions by name, and offered their deepest and sincerest thanks to Twilight for her replacement son. Reaching the gazebo, Twilight stopped by her parents, using her Dwemer Shimmer to take up the watering can between them, and giving a generous watering to them both. Agaves and cacti were water-retaining plants, so, admittedly, they did not need quite as much water, but they definitely needed as much sunlight as she could muster. She knelt down, embracing the pots holding her parents.
I swear, Mom, Dad,
she said softly, I'll bring back the sun, and bring you 2 back. Looking up, Twilight's heart soared as the bright sign hanging up over the agave and cactus. It read in bright paint,
Please water Twilight Sparkle's parents, if you have time.
Some pony actually took the time to make this, and raised such awareness of her parents' needs.
Who made the sign?
She said, tears running down her smiling muzzle. Pinky leapt into the air.
It was me. It was me all over, but it was all Verity's idea.
Pinky gestured with feathery hooves toward the alabaster unicorn. Rarity raised a hoof to cover her breast, feeling badly to do so.
It was nothing, really, dear, she said quickly. I just thought
It's such a shame Twilight's not awake to water her parents. And then inspiration struck! I could simply not let such a dear friend of mine take such a heart-rending task upon herself. And so I asked Pinkie Pie if she could aid me in this endeavor. And if you look closely at your parents' pots, I think you'll find something a little extra.
Taking a second glance down at the pots, Twilight sunk onto her haunches as her forehead covered her mouth. Lest she let out a sob of gratitude. Each pot had it in itself placed in a slightly wider and thicker pot, each one decorated with Twilight's cutie mark. The Agate's new pot read, Twilight Sparkle's mother, in loopy Dwemer writing, and the Cactus's new pot read, Twilight Sparkle's father, in the same. Twilight faced Rarity, trotting slowly toward her, her mane shadowing her eyes. Rarity took an involuntary step back. Was this too much? But Twilight threw her hooves around Rarity, sobbing into the Alicorn's shoulder.
Thank you,
she mumbled over and over again. Rarity patted a hoof on Twilight's back. After a minute or so, Twilight pulled away.
But how did you know which plant was my mother and which was my father?
Rarity winked slightly.
Mare's intuition.
Twilight wiped a tear away.
How can I ever repay you for this?
Rarity waved a hoof firmly in the air.
Think nothing of repayment, my dear. It was the least I could do for such a dear friend. There it is again,
Twilight thought wearily, behind her grateful smile.
Why in Harmonia does she still want to be my friend after all the horse apples I've been putting them through?
The seven reached the Golden Oak Library in no time, though admittedly, it would have been slightly faster had they not been stopped every 5 paces by some pony who wanted to shake Twilight's hoof for her son. Regardless, they reached the library just shy of 11 o'clock ante-meridian, so they had a few good hours left in the day before the false sun had set, and the growing cold of the everlasting night set in. In the main room of the library, Twilight, with Spike at her side, turned to face the 5 mares who followed her here.
All right, every pony, she said sharply. We need to put a stop to Nightmare Moon's Nighttime Eternal as quickly as equally possible. And to do that, we're going to need to pursue every single one of these books.
She stamped a hoof on the ground to emphasize each word.
It doesn't matter how trivial or insignificant you think it is, unless it's fiction, we need to find any information that we can get on the elements of harmony. If we all search together, well, surely we can find something.
The party split up into pairs. Twilight and Applejack, Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy, Rarity and Spike. Pinkie hopped between each of the 3 pairs. Each pair took a bookshelf. It was clear from the beginning that this would be a tedious test of patience, especially for Rainbow Dash. But the prospect was not made any easier by seeing just how many books there were to pursue. Since they did not want to miss a thing, simply glancing at a page would not suffice. They would have to carefully scan every page of every book in the library to see if they could find anything on the elements of harmony. After the first hour, even Twilight Sparkle had to admit that all of the fun left this exercise. By her own admission, this was not meant to be an enjoyable exercise. But there was only so much reading that one pony could do. Even Spike's attempts to woo Rarity were only met by curt remarks that were more important things to deal with presently than her birthday, favorite color, favorite flower, favorite type of music, what she looked for in a special sun pony, and the like. Mercifully, their search was ended with the discovery of a slip of parchment between the elements of good cooking and emergency force of will, a guide on how to be assertive, by Iron Will. Pinkie was the one who found it. Squealing it was under E! As he waved it about between her forehoofs. Twilight took the note in her Dwemer shimmer and began reading it aloud for her companions.
My dearest and most faithful student, Twilight Sparkle, I can only hope that you followed your instincts and searched here in the E section of the Golden Oaks Library first, and spared yourself a headache. Even in the most modest of libraries, an alphabetical search for a specific subject matter can be egregious. I will mince no words. You will not find anything on the elements out here in Ponyville.
I have a personal journal regarding the nature of each of the 6 elements and how each is activated. But I have taken care to conceal it outside of Canterlot, for fear that Nightmare Moon would see it destroyed. Where? I cannot say, in case this message is intercepted. So I instead leave you with a few words. Stay vigilant, my little pony. Too many in Canterlot lack the resolve that you do to stand up to adversity. Under Nightmare Moon you will find many enemies. Do not let your spirit falter. I have high hopes for you. Ever since I brought you under my wing, you have been my beacon of hope. Stay strong. Of course, you must keep your friends at your side. Never let them out of your heart. Ponies having strong hearts, my beloved pupil. Under the most adverse of conditions, they can still stand strong. Nothing holds higher admiration in my heart. Do not doubt them. All ponies have a great capacity for goodness. Many do bad things, to be fair, but only when they are angry or scared. In time, even the blackest of heart shines with light. Your friends carry your burden if you find it too great. I assure you they will not falter. Adversity brings out the best in a true friend. Calm your mind and do not push them away. Unless we stand in unity, we will crumble in the night. Learn to make friends. Trust in them. Unloose the bonds on your heart. Rest easy. Do not rush, and take care. Eventually, I know that you will learn the magic of friendship. Your ever hopeful mentor, Queen Celestia Abralonia de Equestria. The 25th. Twilight twisted the parchment in her Dwimmer shimmer. There was nothing on the back. Queen Celestia may have taken quill to this paper in the hopes of alleviating Twilight's tension. It was clear now that there was nothing related to the elements of harmony or Nightmare Moon out here in Ponyville. But if anything, this just made her quest seem even more hopeless. She was trapped in a world of everlasting night. Her mentor, the Queen, wasn't present. She had no way of reversing what had unfolded, and every pony wanted her to make friends with every pony in the universe! But maybe it was something in the message Twilight was missing. Perhaps the Queen's message that Philomena delivered had given Twilight an added degree of insight, but maybe, just maybe, I think the Queen's hidden a message in this letter as well, she said brightly. Rainbow Dash groaned. Oh, what's with all the hidden messages with Queen Celestia all of a sudden? I think it would be prudent to obfuscate the message, Rarity said sharply, in case it falls into the wrong hoops. Rainbow Dash crossed her forearms. It's still stupid. Twilight had placed a note on the table in the middle of the room. Thus under the wooden bust of Smart Cookie, one of Equestria's 6 founders over 2.5 dozen years ago. Reducing a quill, she carefully looked over the letter again, writing a letter in the corner intermittently. After a minute, she smiled brightly. As I thought, it was an acrostic! A what? A coded message where the real message is concealed in the first letter of each sentence, she explained. It's simple, but her previous message tipped me off to the hidden message she could have made in this letter. Yeah, Rainbow Dash muttered. So, what's the message? Studies on Ponyville culture. Silence greeted Twilight for a moment. The study of what, Niall? Twilight, I just read that message, and I don't know how you got that unless it was meant to be all jumbled up. In which case, you're better at studying that message than I am. It's a book on the study of the cultures of zebras, explained Twilight. Eyebrows furrowed slightly in concentration, that no pony else knew that. It was written by a long time ago by Masquerade, a noted historian. It can only be found on the most upscale of libraries. I doubt we find it here, but it can't hurt to check. A quick perusal of the S section made it quite plain there was no copy of Studies of Ponyville Culture in the library stores.
Now what do we do?
Fluttershy asked meekly. Now, Twilight said, with every degree of confidence, I simply link out to the Royal Canterlot Archives, get their copy of Studies on Ponyville Culture, check out their page 25 or chapter 25, and see what hidden messages I can decipher from the text.
Twilight's Alicorn began to twinkle with her pink glimmer shimmer, the spell matrices lining up in her mind to wake out to her favorite reading spot in the Candlelight Archives. And she felt a violent jolt shooting down from the tip of her Alicorn all the way down to her brainstem, as though she had just galloped full speed into a steel wall. Her body quaked furiously, both foreloves grasping at her horn as she fell to her chest. Spike ran up to Twilight, trying to help her up. "Are you all right?" "Warts!" she muttered through clenched teeth, tears of pain streaking down from her eyes.
"Nightmare Moon must have set up an anti-winking wards around Canterlot."
Oh, my.
Fluttershy gasped. "So, now what do we do?" Rainbow Dash growled.
"There's only one thing we can do,"
Twilight said decisively, stamping a hoof on the ground.
"Approach Canterlot on hoof, sneak into the Royal Archives, and sneak a peek at the studies of Ponyville culture."
Twilight,
Rarity cut in, waving a hoof to get Twilight's attention.
if I may ask, isn't there, perhaps, a more easily accessible copy of this studies on Ponyville culture?"
"I'm afraid not, Rarity. That's the only copy of the book I'm aware of. It's very rare, and it has a very long back-order time."
At this, Rarity withdrew her hoof, using it to nervously brush her mane.
"But walking to Canterlot, it would take days! Away from home, away from all my amenities, I'll simply become unpresentable!"
Rainbow Dash and Applejack both pointed their hooves with their faces.
"Why, I might even grow a beard!"
Awkward silence hung over the library room for several seconds. Applejack and Rainbow Dash bit their prospective lower lips, trying not to laugh. Fluttershy's eyes widened, and her own lips drew taut in some sort of distraught emotion. Pinkie rubbed her own chin pensively. Twilight knitted her eyebrows.
"Rarity, all unicorns grow beards, even the mares,"
she said matter-of-factly.
"Even I'm growing a beard. Look!"
She pointed at the sapphire stubble on her own muzzle, having not shaved since the night before she left for Ponyville, a pink streak of stubble running directly down her middle of her chin.
"But you don't understand!"
Rarity hissed frantically. This seemed to be a genuinely big deal for her.
"My facial hair, it clashes completely with my mane and tail. It is absolutely untamable in every meaning of the word. I would find it unbearable to present myself at the gates of Canterlot with the appearances of a vagabond. Oh, woe is me!"
On those loud words, Rarity drew a forehoof to her forehead and reared onto her hind legs dramatically.
"Then bring a razor,"
Rainbow Dash said bluntly.
"We've got bigger things to worry about than making sure our facial hair matches our forelocks."
For good measure, she flicked her forelock as she finished her sentence. Twilight sighed, stroking her stubble with her forearm.
"Bring a razor if you must, Rarity," she said, "but we have to travel light. Don't bring anything more than what you need. We'll live off grass and dew if we have to. But we have to get that book."
"If you don't mind my asking, Twilight," Applejack asked, "what in the wild world of Equestria is so important about that book?"
"Yeah,"
agreed Rainbow Dash, her forelegs folded.
"I mean, it's not like zebra rhymes are the way to fix these elements."
Twilight scowled slightly at Rainbow Dash's slight and zebra poetry.
"Maybe not, but Queen Celestia may have hidden a message in there that has information we need related to the elements of harmony."
Her eyes settled on each pony in turn. Applejack, with her scars and Stetson. Rainbow Dash, with her cocky arch to the eyebrows. Rarity, sleek coat. Fluttershy, with her meek turn of the head to hide behind her mane. And Pinkie Pie, with her bouncy mane and indomitable joy. Twilight reached around to Spike, who took her hoof in his claw.
"I'm leaving Spike in your care, while I go and get the studies of Ponyville culture." "What?"
Spike wasn't the only one who said it. Each and every one of the 5 mares in front of Twilight said it at varying degrees of volume and length.
"No way I'm letting you go off like that without me, Mom! Twilight. I waited right by your bed in the hospital the minute they brought you in, and I don't want to see you like that again. I'm coming with you.
Wherever you go, from now on!
Spike said all of this with more of a fortitude than Twilight had ever heard out of her Drake ward. She did not doubt that he was a strong-willed little dragon. But this was different from refusing to go to sleep at your usual bedtime. This was a quest, one fraught with peril and dangers that could very well take your life. As confused as Twilight was as to what Spike meant to her, she knew that she couldn't put his life at risk. "Spike," she said softly, "I really appreciate it, but I can't let you get hurt. That's why I want you to stay with Applejack and the others until I've returned. That's the safest place you could be."
"But I feel safer with you!"
Spike hugged her foreleg. Twilight was confused. Exactly who was trying to keep who safe?
"Sugar Cube," began Applejack, stepping forward towards the table. "I'll understand you mean well, but I reckon you're trying to shoulder a burden that's too big for you." "We followed you into Everfree," continued Rainbow Dash. "I think that kind of makes us enemies of Nightmare Moon, too."
It would make me feel just awful if I couldn't do what I can to help,"
Fluttershy added, shadowing Rainbow Dash.
"I would be remiss to let you undertake such a task on your own," Rarity said, trying to stand alongside Fluttershy.
"And you're going to need me to keep your frowns upside down,"
Pinkie gleefully squealed, rocking back and forth behind the other four. Twilight locked eyes with each of the 5 mares sharing the room with her. Each one wore a hopeful smile on their muzzles. Looking down, Twilight saw Spike smiling hopefully as well. Smiling down at her only friend, Twilight nuzzled him gently, before slowly looking up at the other mares. "You don't have to do this."
"Like highway don't!" Applejack said sorrowfully, stomping a hoof. "You're our friend, and we're sticking to you like apple butter to fancy toast." "You wouldn't have made it out of the Everfree on your own, and that was before Nightmare Moon took over Canterlot," Rainbow Dash added.
"I would simply not be able to live with myself if I let you go alone," said Rarity.
"I'm afraid I'll just get in the way,
Fluttershy said.
but I would really rather be there to help you, if that's okay with you."
"Every pony needs a laugh and a smile," Pinkie cheered. Twilight blinked. Earlier, she thought she was better off without these ponies, who seemed to want to be her friends simply for the sake of being friends. But now, after all they had to say, and all she had seemed to do, she realized that their efforts were not simply selfish. They were genuinely looking out for her. Ordinarily, she would not have cared that their care was genuine, but a fire had been kindled in her heart on realizing the care these ponies showed for her parents. Twilight found herself smiling. "If you girls really want to come with me, there's something we'll all have to do." It turned out that Pinkie Pie's home was a large 2-story home with a loft that looked more like it was made out of gingerbread than wood. The tiled roof was the exact shade of milk chocolate, detailed with what looked exactly like rock frosting. One of the rafters at the top bore a weather vane shaped like a pony holding a candy lane in his forelegs. The loft, clearly added later on, was shaped like a cupcake decorated with pink icing. 3 purple stalks at the top alight with lanterns, posing as larger-than-life birthday candles. Twilight marveled at the candy cane pillars flanking the front door before Pinkie kicked in the front door with a forehoof, the door ricocheting off a set of springs. Her parents must have gotten used to that, Twilight thought, looking about the store space that made up of what had to be a living room. There was a fragrance of freshly baked cookies in the air, and Twilight was instantly transported to her fillyhood days, with her beloved Smarty Pants doll at her side, snagging her mother's cookie from the cookie jar. "I'm home!" Pinkie called out in a song-like tone, bringing Twilight back to the present. An Earth Pony couple emerged from the door to the kitchen. The male of the pair was tall and gangly, while his wife was short and plump, though a certain tautness of her belly told Twilight she was expecting. The stallion had a bright yellow coat, a brilliantly orange mane, orange freckles, and an underbite. The mare, had a dark pink mane that swirled not unlike the icing on a cupcake, and a light cerulean coat. The stallion's eyes were deep green, and his cutie mark was a set of 3 carrot cakes. The mare had a cutie mark of 3 cupcakes, pale pink baubles dangling from her ears, and bright pink eyes. Between the pair of them, though, they put on joyous airs. Twilight couldn't help but put a note of slight air of fear about the two. She could understand why. The false sun would not last forever, and they perhaps feared Miss Pie's falling went under eternal night. "Welcome home, Pinky," said the stallion, he and his wife bringing up a 4-leg each as Pinky dived into a hug. Twilight felt a tug at her heartstrings. Her own parents had not been able to hug her like that in almost 12 years. The mare looked over Pinky's shoulder at Twilight and smiled. "I suppose you are Pinky's new friend, Twilight Sparkle from Canterlot?" "Yes, I am, Mrs. Pie," replied Twilight. Pinky and the baker mare and stallion gave Twilight a peculiar look for a moment. Then Pinky began to laugh uproariously, rolling around the floor. The baker couple laughed far more sheepishly, and Twilight suddenly felt her face flushing. "We're not Pinky's parents, dear," the mare said, with a wave of a fluffy fetlock. "We employ her and fill her living space. But she's as dear to us as any daughter," said the stallion, resting his head on top of Pinky's, who returned the hug with rib-crushing force, if his bulging eyes were any indication. "I love you too, Daddy Carrot Cake." The mare cleared her throat. "Ahem. My name is Cupcake, and this is my husband, Carrot Cake. Pinky, dear, would you kindly let him go? He needs to breathe, thank you. And we are the proprietors and founders of this confectionery/bakery, Sugar Cube Corner." After this came Twilight's more proper introductions of herself and Spike to Mrs. and Mr. Cake, which led them into the Cake's living quarters, behind the store space and kitchen. There, the party explained to the Cakes the endeavor that Twilight was going to undertake, which Pinky was going to join her on. "And we're going to throw a pre-research party to boot," Pinky piped in as Twilight finished her explanation to the Cakes. "Think you could swing some of the usual party cakes, cupcakes, carrot cakes, pound cakes, pumpkin cakes?" "Pinky," Mr. Cake said quickly, waving a hoof at Pinky. "I think we can handle a bit of a big order. Though, we'll have to be careful with our flour after this. We can expect a bit of a decline in buying flour now that night's fallen," finished Mrs. Cake darkly. "Don't worry, Mrs. Cake," Twilight said in what she hoped was a sympathetic tone. "With any luck, the sun will be back soon, and your business will flourish again." "And you can't spell flourish without flour," Pinky said, bouncing up to the ceiling. The Cake smiled up at her, and Twilight couldn't help but smirk too. "What's wrong with me?" Twilight thought. "It's not like I think of these ponies as friends or anything." She tried to ignore Spike's snickering, directed at her smirk. Fluttershy's home was a small cottage beyond the edge of Ponyville, not even a minute's trot away from the Everfree forest. A stone bridge crossed the creek. Perhaps the Everfree was not as close to the house as it was when it was first built. And an unpaved road led from the bridge to a low wooden bench, encircling a cottage with a small field, and in that field were a chicken coop and a large gardening shed. "You live alone, Fluttershy?" Twilight asked. "Oh, no, of course not," Fluttershy replied, smiling softly. "I live with some of my very best friends." "Really?" Twilight said in bemusement, looking to the cottage. It really looked too small for more than 2 or 3 ponies. "Oh, yes," affirmed Fluttershy. "I couldn't possibly let so many bunnies, mice, rats, cats, dogs, bats, and such go without a safe place to go to so close to the Everfree." "Wait, what?" A large shape lurched by one of the trees, and Twilight gave a start, diving in front of Fluttershy. "It's a bear! Run, you guys! I'll distract it!" But Fluttershy fluttered right past Twilight, raising a hoof toward the bear. Before Twilight's swimmer shimmer could envelop Fluttershy and snap her away from the beast, the bear actually leaned into Fluttershy's hoof and began to growl in pleasure as he scratched the top of his head. "You're just a big old softy, aren't you?" Fluttershy said gently to the bear. Twilight took a step back, wondering if Fluttershy had lost her mind. Also, what could she possibly do to get Fluttershy away from the bear before it mauled her? Before she could make up her mind, though, Rainbow Dash put a hoof on her shoulder. "Cool your wings there, bookworm," Rainbow Dash smirked. "As crazy as it sounds, she's got this." But, it's a bear!" "Yeah, a bear with killer cravings for porridge, and believe me, Fluttershy cooks it just right." Twilight stared in awe at the bear as it lowered itself onto all fours, then its belly, as Fluttershy rubbed a hoof on its forehead. The yellow Pegasus was letting out a loud growl of maleficent rhythm that sounded more like a purr. The bear certainly seemed harmless enough now, but how did you know that the bear liked porridge to begin with?" Twilight sputtered. Fluttershy removed her hoof from the bear's forehead. Its paws curled contentedly at the grass, and looked at Twilight with a deeply loving smile. "I didn't," Fluttershy said softly. "I just saw this poor little thing at the edge of the evergreen, and he looked positively starved, although he did lash out at me." Fluttershy looked down at 4 large, deep claw marks on the left of her flank, across her cutie mark, and Twilight winced as she realized how the yellow Pegasus got those scars. "But I knew he didn't mean it. Harry here tells me he just lost a fight against an Earthrex." "You call him Harry?" "He calls himself Harry. But I offered him my porridge if he would spare me. I know bears don't normally eat porridge, but he looked just so hungry." "You were going to feed an animal that very well could have eaten you? What if he just ate you out of that?" Fluttershy's smile never faltered, and her sweet tone stayed completely unchanged as she retorted, "I would have been glad to know that my last act on this good earth was an act of kindness." To this, Twilight had no reply. "And it worked out in any case." Fluttershy looked back to Harry the bear, smiling sweetly down at the bear, who waved at Fluttershy with a floppy paw. "He really is a big sweetie. All I did was give him a bowl of porridge, and he's been such a big help in keeping harmony off here at the edge of Equestria, and he helps get me all the honey for Ponyville, too. Everbee honey is some of the best in all Equestria." "That's amazing, Fluttershy!" piped out Spike. "You can tame anything!" Fluttershy's ears drooped slightly, withdrawing behind her mane slightly. "Oh, I wouldn't quite say anything. I've always had trouble with ravens." Deciding not to press Fluttershy down a path she was uncomfortable with, Twilight burlesquely changed subjects. "You said you live with friends. Who are they?" At the change of subject, Fluttershy perked up. "Oh, I live with my friend Angel Bunny. He's a bunny rabbit, and the mouse family, and all sorts of different birds and badgers and raccoons, hedgehogs and porcupines." She fluttered into the air, eyes closed in glee. "Oh, my heart is just fluttering thinking about them." Twilight's eyes twitched. "Those are pets, Fluttershy, not friends." "Maybe you think that," Fluttershy replied, and Twilight gave a start at the sudden sharp edge to Fluttershy's tone. "But I see each animal as an individual. I don't see them as pets." I'm sorry," Twilight said hastily, quailing under Fluttershy's intense stare. "I didn't know you felt that way." Fluttershy's eyes softened. "It's okay, Twilight. You just didn't know. Shall I introduce you to all of my friends?" Twilight shrugged a forehoof. "Might as well. A few more friends can't hurt." "Angel Bunny is a complete duckhead!" Twilight muttered as the party left Fluttershy's cottage. "Oh, I'm sure he didn't mean to throw that carrot at your head, Twilight," Fluttershy said gently, fluttering just over Twilight's shoulder. "I'm positive that his paw slipped." "6 times in 2 minutes?" "Well, maybe once or twice, but once you get to know him, Angel Bunny is a real sweetheart." Twilight sincerely doubted it, but as they were still within earshot of Fluttershy's cottage, she held her tongue and set her trot toward Ponyville proper once more. Regenerated sun was about high noon. The animals who lived in Fluttershy's cottage, specifically Angel Bunny, a family of 5 mice, 4 robins, 3 bluebirds, 7 swallows, 5 pigeons, 6 ferrets, 3 badgers, 4 hedgehogs, and 2 porcupines, and 1 little angel bunny, had all listened in on the explanation that Fluttershy would be away for an intermediate amount of time. This was when the first carrot attack struck Twilight's face. Angel smiled innocently, but the carrot always seemed to slip from the White Rabbit's paw whenever Twilight mentioned the idea of Fluttershy leaving. The animals had started a protestful din, but Fluttershy chirped, cheeped, twittered, chittered, and squeaked to each in turn that she was not going to be away forever, and it was to bring back the real sun. It was around this point that the last carrot slipped from Angel's hand onto Twilight's muzzle.
I suppose we could stop by my parents' place on the way to Sweet Apple Acres,
Rarity added, once they passed between the 2 homes at the edge of Ponyville. Passing by were a gray Pegasus mare, a chestnut Earth Pony stallion, and a pale purple unicorn filly.
Hi!
Hi!
Hi! It's not terribly far from Tukaku Corner. We could perhaps have gone there first, but I am Master Featherside needed to tend to her animals. Thank you for your consideration, Rarity,
smiled Fluttershy.
What about your house, Rainbow Dash?
Twilight asked pointedly. Rainbow Dash gave a nervous chuckle. My place is way on the other side of Ponyville for Sweet Apple Acres. And besides, you non-Pegasus guys would have to figure out how to walk on clouds to drop by.
Well, there is the commatory spell.
Rainbow Dash sneezed violently, in a manner that sounded suspiciously like, "Hang it!" Twilight scowled, and Pinkie Pie trilled,
"Gesundheit!"
The home that Rarity's folks lived in was at the end of a cul-de-sac leading off from Skirku Corner. It was surprisingly homely for a home that Rarity Bell grew up in. Indeed, Rarity seemed to have slunk quite low to the ground, trying to remain unseen as he approached the house. Twilight raised an eyebrow, but then recalled Rarity's haute couture accent and almost regal Maine style. Her ears flat against her head, Rarity trembled as she raised the hoof to the door. She hesitated for a long, long moment. Pinkie whispered in Twilight's ear,
"Do you think she knows how to knock?"
Finally, screwing her courage to the sticking place, Twilight tapped faintly at the door, before huddling against it, trying to remain as small and unassuming as possible. The door swung open, revealing a beefly Earth Pony stallion with Rarity's white coat, a faded brown mane and mustache, 3 hoofballs for a cutie mark. He was wearing a collared shirt, navy blue, decorated with horribly classy white and yellow flowers. Though his coat was the same shade as his daughter's, his had a rather uncared-for quality to it, starkly different from Rarity's expertly cared-for coat. "Well, buck me to the goalpost and call me a pigskin!" He had a very pronounced Chicago accent, so unlike Rarity's. He pulled her up with his faded brown hooves and pulled her into a tight hug. "I didn't know you were dropping by. Just in time for Sue to get home, Rares."
"Really now, Father!"
"Ugh!" Rarity gasped out. It was at this point that Rarity's father noticed the 5 other mares and Dragon Cub on his doorstep, and loosened his grip slightly. Rarity slid to the doormat in numb shock. "If I may ask, who the hell are these ponies, Rarity?" Rarity, picking herself off, dusted off her coat as best she could, gestured toward her father.
"Every pony? This is my father, Hondo Flanks."
There was the slightest hesitation before she said her father's name. "Bet my shoulder money quarterbacking posse also knows me as Magnum." He cut in with a cheeky grin. Trying to ignore her father's lack of classiness, Rarity pointed to each of the 5 mares in turn.
"Of course, you've heard of my small friend Rarity."
Fluttershy withdrew behind her mane.
"There's also Rainbow Dash."
Rainbow did a loop-de-loop.
"Applejack."
Applejack crossed her right foreleg in front of her left.
"Pinkie Pie."
Pinkie prunked twice.
"Twilight Sparkle from Canterlot."
Twilight waved sheepishly, giving a very faint smile. "And I'm Spike!" Spike cut in. pushing his way towards Rarity and her father, putting on a rather obvious air as a gentle colt. And might I say, Mr. Rarity's father, you have a very lovely daughter. Rarity gave a light lady laugh. Oh, Spike, you flatterer. Hondo let out a nasally laugh, and Twilight saw Rarity's nose wrinkle at the sound of it. He leaned down to Rarity's ear and whispered in a mock conspiracy tone, It looks like you got yourself an admirers, Rares.
Really, father?
Rarity said, with a dismissive wave of her hoof.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Twilight had a very good idea that Rarity was putting on airs.
Hondo?
Called a mare's voice with a strong, new genetic accent.
There's someone out there.
Mare's back with some friends of hers, Hondo called back into the house.
Rarity?
The voice said excited.
Well, not the end, Frankie. There's still some of Sweet Rosie's velvet cake left over from last night.
Rarity put on a forced smile.
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
They entered the home. It was plain all the more why Rarity made it such an issue to avoid being seen entering this house. This home's homeliness was only greater on the inside, and the interior design was severely lacking, even to some pony with such a novice idea of interior design as Twilight Sparkle. A unicorn mare, short and round, was standing near the kitchen doorway. She had her purple mane, identical to Rarity's in color, but not in sheen, a tall beehive behind her horn. Her coat was light pink, and she wore a pair of large, pale yellow baubles in her ears.
Well, come on into the dining room, she said in her new genetic accent. Dinner's about ready. It's your favorite Rarity, spaghetti, with lots of oregano. Sons! Lovely,
replied Rarity, sitting on her haunches at the modest dining table, her mother stirring the cooking pot with a skimmer in her mouth. From this angle, Twilight could see that her cutie mark was the 3 chocolate chip cookies, one with a bite out of it. After a few moments, Rarity turned to her friends, seated awkwardly around the cramped dinner table, and gestured toward the cooking mare.
And this is my mother, Pearl Bubbles.
Oh, I sell books under the name Cookie Crumbles, Pearl added brightly.
This little sweetie belle likes to do some of her mom's recipes. I am ever so proud of her. Oh, that reminds me. Sweetie Belle's going to be home from school soon.
Oh, ready? Twilight piped in, looking at the clock.
But it's barely 8:30.
School's been letting out early since you've been out, Rainbow Dash explained. I guess a lot of parents got worried about their foals. No sooner had Rainbow finished speaking than a small series of knocks came at the front door. Before it slid open, and a squeaky little voice of a filly chimed in with,
Mommy, Daddy, I'm home.
Looking through to the living room, Twilight saw a tiny unicorn filly trotting with short legs around the couch to the dining room. Her coat was sleek and white, just like her big sister Rarity, and her mane and tail were pale purple with pale rose headlights, perky and poofy. Her pale green eyes were bright and youthful with energy, and her flank was devoid of a cutie mark. Oh, come here, you little rascal! Beckoned Hondo, reaching out with a foreleg to wrap his younger daughter in a one-armed hug, nuzzling her mane with his other foreleg. These days, you're going to be too big for me to hold you like this.
Did Miss Terry walk you home, sweetie?
Asked Pearl.
I did, Mrs. Bubbles. Don't you worry.
Came a bright mare's voice from the front door. There, Twilight now noticed, was an earth pony mare about her age, slender and yet not frail. Her bouncy pale rose mane did not quite fall over the soft light green eyes. Cheerily's coat was a moderate cerise, and her cutie mark was one of 3 smiling flowers. Curiously, she had pale rose feathers around her fetlocks. Did she have a Pegasus in her immediate family? You're a lifesaver. You know that, Miss Cheerily? Hondo said. You really didn't have to take the time out to walk each pony and colt from home from school.
It's my job, Mr. Flanks,
Cheerily explained brightly,
to make sure that every filly and colt learns the joy of knowledge, and I can only do that if each filly and colt is safe and sound. I guess it also helps our little sweet belle is a regular little angel,
Pearl said, as he endearingly ruffled Sweetie's mane.
Charlie chuckled briefly.
I suppose so. Well, take care.
She turned and closed the front door behind her.
Really? Isn't Miss Shirley the greatest teacher ever?
Sweetie said brightly, turning to Rarity with a big smile. Sweetie gave a double take.
Wait, really?
Rarity smiled slightly sheepishly.
Long time no see, Sweetie Belle.
Sweetie Belle let out a high squeal of,
My big sister's home!
And started bouncing about the room, declaiming her adoration of her big sister. Pretty soon, Pinkie Pie joined in, seemingly just for the sake of joining in, plunking along behind her. Birds of a feather, Twilight thought, before she realized she herself had a smile on her face. Once they had gotten Sweetie Belle to settle down, they all sat down and helped themselves to Pearl Bubbles' cooking. Twilight found it well cooked, though Twilight's mind was not on the cooking, and doubted Rarity's was either. After the plates were cleared of spaghetti and sauce, Pearl Bubbles produced from the icebox a plate laden with some sort of black burnt lump.
And now for dessert. Sweetie's take on an old family recipe, rose velvet cake.
Trepidatiously, Twilight sniffed at the pile of black ashes that had been piled onto her plate. Her ears went flat at the sensation of nose hairs being burnt away. But she noted Rarity was eating it without any outward reaction out of the corner of her eye. Sweetie Belle was smiling expectantly at Twilight, who was the only one who had not touched her slice of rose velvet cake. Hesitating no longer, Twilight scooped up some with her fork and levitated toward her mouth. It tasted exactly like nails. Chewing it slowly, Twilight found it very dry, like she was chewing dirt. Trying to ignore the fact that Pinkie was chowing down as though it was hay from the Elysian fields, Twilight slowly swallowed.
Well, it's good,
she said quickly.
Really?
Sweetie Belle squeaked.
What are you talking about, Twilight?
Rainbow Dash blurted from across the table.
This stuff.
Rarity sucked her foot into Rainbow Dash's mouth, glaring daggers at her. It was only after the rainbow-maned Pegasus gave an impeccable nod that Rarity remained her huff.
Well, what I'm saying is that,
Rainbow Dash said, her nose wrinkled in her eyes, and darted up and down the table.
This stuff is awesome!
Yes, Sweetie Belle repeated excitedly.
It sure is, sugar,
Pearl said, nuzzling her daughter. She had an excellent poker face. Trying not to let herself hurt at the sight of such a loving mother doting on her daughter, Twilight cleared her throat and explained the reason why they had come. As she explained the situation of the elements and Nightmare Moon to Rarity's family, Twilight wondered whether she should have brought each of these 5 families to one place and explained it all at once. That, perhaps, would have been more efficient. However, that could lead to potentially more interruptions, and perhaps some families might get into a fight. That would take precious time in breaking up fights. As far as Twilight knew, which was precious little, there were no quarrels between the families of these 5. But, better to be safe than sorry.
And you're sure you thought all this a way through, Rares?
Hondo asked his oldest daughter.
Positive, Father, she replied. I simply couldn't bear to let Twilight go off on such a quest all on her own.
And I'll be there to make sure Rarity stays safe, Spike interjected.
Sweetie Belle giggled. But you're such a little dragon.
Well, I have a big heart.
Well, we have faith you'll keep our Rarity safe, little guy,
Pearl said softly, tickling under Spike's chin.
You will make sure that Opal Essence is taken care of, right?
Rarity asked her parents.
Sure thing, squeaked Sweetie Belle. I'm great with cats.
Rarity forced a smile.
I'm sure you are, dear.
Rarity let out a none too subtle sigh of relief as soon as they left the cul-de-sac.
I dare say that was a bracing encounter.
Twilight cocked an eyebrow at Rarity.
Your parents weren't that bad, Rarity. I would agree to disagree with you on that span, my dear, replied Fasinisa. Did you see just how tacky their dress sense was? How could they possibly let themselves show in public?
Just be glad you still have parents,
Twilight said darkly, her ears drooping.
Oh,
Gasped Rarity.
I'm terribly sorry, dear. I didn't mean to.
Don't worry about me, Rarity, Twilight interrupted. I'll fix the problem with my parents on my own. Looking for some way to lighten the mood, if only for her sake, Twilight decided to change the subject. So, what about your little sister? Rarity's eyes began to sparkle.
Sweetie Belle. Well, she is a darling little dear, though her cooking could use some work. She might be a bit enthusiastic for my taste, but I love her more than anything in the world.
Rats! Hissed Spike on Twilight's back. He was still a baby dragon, and walking to and fro throughout Ponyville was taking its toll on his hind claws.
So, Rainbow Dash,
Twilight said to the rainbow-maned Pegasus.
Should we visit your folks' home and tell them that you've...
My parents live in Cloudsdale, Rainbow Dash said, her eyes not meeting Twilight's. They'll find out sooner or later what I'm doing. Before Twilight could puzzle out the reason for Rainbow Dash's evasiveness, her eyes flew back in response to a sudden shout from a completely unfamiliar voice.
Hey, Rainbow Dash!
Her eyes darted around for the source of the shout, and settled upon an approaching cloud of dust and dirt. At its head was a small Pegasus filly, with a wild cerise mane and light orange coat. Her pale purple eyes were sparkling with unbridled energy as he rode up on a scooter, her small wings buzzing at her sides.
Just as soon as she'd taken in the details of this filly's appearance, Twilight gaped and noticed a pale blue unicorn mare with a mixed dark blue and pale gray mane about to cross between the filly and her party.
Before Twilight could shout, "Watch out!" the filly leapt off her scooter, wings not giving flight, but supporting her in the air, just long enough to clear the space over the blue unicorn mare, her scooter whooshing by underneath just as the mare realized what was happening. Twilight blinked in astonishment, and the blue mare shook her hoof in surprise and anger, as the Pegasus filly landed back on her scooter, resumed her forward momentum, and skated to a stop just before a smirking Rainbow Dash. Now that she was closer, Twilight could see that this Pegasus filly had no feathered fetlocks, and her coat was unkempt, as though she'd been caught in a number of schoolyard scrapes in the very recent past. She had a small scar on the middle of her chin.
Rainbow Dash! Rainbow Dash! Did you see that? How was that for a six-scooter move?
The filly said, very excitedly. Rainbow Dash tousled the filly's mane, making it appear even more disheveled. That was pretty sweet, Squirt, she said with a smirk. Then she frowned, sat on her haunches, and pointed at her own skull. But you forgot your helmet.
Oh, I can take a little rough and tumble, Rainbow Dash, the filly said dismissively. I'm super awesome, just like you.
Well, that is true, Rainbow Dash said, her chest swelling with pride, before resuming her stern stare upon her admirer. But you still gotta keep safety first, Skidaloo, especially with this whole nighttime eternal deal. There might be a big, dark rock that you don't see until it's too late. The filly named Skidaloo looked down ashamedly, her ears drooping slightly.
You're right, Rainbow Dash. I shouldn't be so reckless. I mean, my wings haven't grown in yet.
Hey, kid! Rainbow Dash leaned forward, raising Skidaloo's head by the chin. She smiled down at Skidaloo with such warmth that Twilight was astonished. Don't be so glum. You'll never be pulling those sweet moves for all Equestria to see with that attitude. Be careful. Wear a helmet, knee, and elbow pads if you can get them, but only when you're practicing. When you're really, truly, absolutely, 110% certain that you've nailed it, then you can test the safety gear. She pulled in the filly with a wing, holding Skidaloo to her barrel. I don't want to see you get hurt yourself, Scoots. You're the most awesome filly in Equestria. And don't you forget it! Rainbow Dash nuzzled Skidaloo, and the orange filly returned the favor. After a moment, Rainbow Dash nudged Skidaloo towards her scooter. Enough with the mushy stuff, kid. You gotta get home. School might have let out early the past couple days, but the sun's still out like a light. I'm sure your parents are worried sick about you. Skidaloo was just putting a hind hoof to the dirt road, and went stiff at that last sentence. Twilight noticed, though
it was only because she had a sharp eye for the most minute changes in a pony's demeanor. She put it down to her years of chemistry under Queen Celestia's tutelage. After a moment that contained an eternity, Scootaloo smiled up at Rainbow Dash, though Twilight noticed that the smile seemed a little forced.
Yeah, sure.
And Scootaloo darted off without another word. Twilight looked at Rainbow Dash.
Rainbow?
Rainbow Dash looked at Twilight.
Did you notice that?
Notice what?
How she was about...
About what? Twilight felt her throat constrict.
This really wasn't her business.
Whatever state of existence Scootaloo's parents were in was Scootaloo's business alone. And what she told Rainbow Dash about her folks was Scootaloo and Rainbow Dash's business. With a heart of lead, Twilight sighed.
Nothing.
Rainbow Dash rolled her cerise eyes. Whatever! I think Ponyville's turning you weird. As the group made a turn to the west, towards Sweet Apple Acres, past the Ponyville schoolhouse, Twilight could not help but contemplate the look in Scootaloo's eyes. It was a look that Twilight was intimately familiar with, because those eyes were eyes she saw in the mirror every day. The eyes of an orphan. The miniature sun generated by the Heliodinius spell projected a light just as bright as the real deal. However, because it was far smaller and closer, the light put it out created starker shadows than should have been present under the genuine sun. It gave a certain emptiness to the main building of Sweet Apple Acres, which was exaggerated by the lack of tents pitched up around the orchard.
Your relatives all left, Applejack?
Twilight asked. Well, they all got attended to their own farms, replied the farmer mayor. I mean, in this eternal night, trees need all the tending to they can get.
Including your aunt and uncle's orange grouse?
They farmed stalks, Applejack corrected, up in Manhattan.
Oh,
Twilight said softly.
sorry.
Don't sweat, Supercube. I'm sure their stocks are going to take a bit of a hit. And they got to make sure to sell all their products to investors like. In answer to Twilight's keeping look, Applejack continued, I spent a while living up with them in Manhattan as a filly, before I realized how much I loved apple farming. The group of 7 had now come to the front door to the apple abode. When Applejack reached up to knock, she found that the door slid open. Through the open door, Twilight saw a homey space, cushions set up around the edges of the room for comfortable sitting on the floor. The wallpapering was a soft grassy green, supplemented by framed paintings of orchards and portraits of earth ponies. Seated upon the 3 cushions was a small circle of candles burning in the middle of the room, where Applejack's big brother Big Macintosh, little sister Apple Bloom, and grandmother Granny Smith, curled up at Apple Bloom's hooves, watching Applejack with bright black eyes, was a brown border collie with white spots. The matriarch of the Apple family gave a wrinkly smile and beckoned to the group.
Sit yourselves down if you kindly, she said gently. I'd like to see if you thought this through, Applejack.
Applejack blinked. What do you mean, Granny?
So it means that you're going off on a quest of some sort,
said Big Macintosh, and Twilight's feeling of shock was apparently lesser than Applejack's. The border collie whimpered slightly at Big Mac's words.
If Big Mac's talking more than does the yams and nails, this quest must be something serious,
said Apple Bloom, looking around at the faces of older mares and stallion.
Applejack, what do you mean Big Mac agreeing about a quest?
Applejack looked back to Twilight and the group behind her. Twilight gave her a small nod, and they told everybody else's families. Applejack gave a long, slow sigh as he faced her siblings and grandmother. I'm a-going with Twilight Sparkle here to find out how to get those helmets here of Harmony to work again. She shifted her weight to allow the element fragments to rattle in her saddlebags. I don't intend to let anybody tell me otherwise. I'm going, and that's final. Granny Smith's expression was unreadable. Big Mac looked somewhat stern. And Apple Bloom? Apple Bloom looked absolutely crestfallen, an expression mirrored by the dog.
So, you're leaving us?
Said Apple Bloom with teary eyes. Even her brows seemed to be drooping dejectedly.
Don't you love us anymore?
She scampered up to Applejack, throwing her forelegs at her big sister in a feeble attempt to hit her, but it ended up turning into a hug around one of Applejack's own forelegs. The border collie trotted up to Applejack as well, resting her head in Applejack's hooves with a whimper. Applejack embraced her little sister. I love you all just the same as ever, Apple Bloom, Applejack said, lowering her head to sister's eye level. Well, that's the honest truth. I wouldn't trade you for any other little sister in all the world. I couldn't possibly ask for a more loyal dog to work than you, Winona, she said, addressing the dog, who barked equally at her master. It's because I love you that I gotta help try to figure out how these elements work.
And if you don't mind my asking,
cut in Granny Smith, pulling out an ear trumpet,
what the cockatiel are them elements?
The elements of harmony are a powerful, thaumaturgical force of coordinates, the same force which banned Nightmare Moon 1,000 years ago, Ty explained.
Come again?
Big Mac said. Twilight said heavily. This was what she'd get for consorting with ponies who didn't read the same level of books she did. Let me start again, Apples, Twilight said sharply. The elements of harmony are a collection of 6 powerfully magical items that Queen Celestia used to banish Nightmare Moon to the moon 12 years ago. I have reason to believe that they are the only means of defeating Nightmare Moon for good and bringing back the sun. Granny Smith nodded solidly and closed her eyes.
I understand how you feel, AJ, and I won't stop you. But Granny!
Squeaked Apple Bloom, her mismatched hind legs kicking at her grandmother in concentration.
Apple Bloom?
Granny Smith said sharply. Circle flute, Applejack said gently. This is a problem for all Equestria. All those cousins and aunts and uncles who often left yesterday, well, their farms aren't lucky enough to have a fake sun circling overhead. Their orchards are facing a whole heap of trouble with the sun not being there to warm things up. I'll bet that snow's falling heavily around some parts. She held her sister close. I don't want you to grow up in a world with no sun. No pony knows how long Twilight's fake sun will last. So, I gotta do what I can to help my friend fix this mess. Apple Blue's nose wrinkled as she struggled to hold back more tears. She clutched her sister's foreleg even more tightly.
Please let me come with you.
No doing, little sis,
Applejack said firmly.
Applejack, I know, baby. I can take care of myself.
Maybe around the farm, but...
Applejack sat on her haunches, rubbing one of the scars on her left foreleg. You know them nighttime blazes up in the everfree that me and Big Mike protect the farm from? Apple Bloom nodded. Winona whimpered involuntarily. Well, they're going to realize soon enough that the sun ain't going to poke her head out anytime soon. Start prowling out to the lands outside Ponyville. They ain't going to come near Sweet Apple Acres, not so long as Big Mac holds down the fort.
Yup,
Big Mac said, as an affirmation of his protection of farm and family. Applejack smiled at him shortly. All them nasty creatures? Manticores, chimeras, owlbears, timberwolves, bugbears. Applejack let out an infinitesimal shudder. They're all going to be on the prowl all over Equestria, and I don't want you to be in more danger than you'll need to be. Apple Bloom gave a shuddering sob.
Applejack. There you go, Apple Bloom,
Granny Smith said softly, placing a feeble foreleg on the small of Apple Bloom's back.
Ain't nothing you can say that'll change Applejack's course now.
Apple Bloom buried her head in Granny Smith's chest, her sobs muffled by her grandmother's fur. Well, the Mike's a feeling it by her, Apple Bloom, said Applejack, tilting her Stetson down slightly. I'm not leaving till tomorrow at, well, the crack of dawn, I guess you could call it. And it's not like we're going to slip out like ninja in the night. I'll hear tell that Pinkie Pie's going to be throwing something on farewell party to give Ponyville a bit of hope for our quest. Apple Bloom looked back to Applejack, a small smile glazing her teary muzzle.
See? You just gotta wipe away your tears.
Piggy chirped, producing a blue balloon, the exact color of one of the balloons on her cutie mark. It even had a yellow string.
Here's a balloon to keep your spirits up.
Apple Bloom took the balloon, her smile broadening as Twilight saw the balloon reflected in her eyes. As far as Twilight had known, parties were something that needed to be planned out reasonably far in advance, to allow for all the preparations to fall together in all the right places. The pre-research trip party invitations were sent out by Pinkie Pie at about 2:30 in the afternoon. The invitations indicated the party would not begin until 4, giving Twilight, Pinkie, and the party only an hour and a half to prepare. Still, Twilight had to be impressed with the camaraderie of Pinkie's adopted parents to cakes, who had baked up several trays worth of cookies, cupcakes, muffins, and the like, while Pinkie was with Twilight, trekking back and forth around Ponyville, of the neighbors of Sugar Cube Corner, supplying their living room and dining room tables to lay out the treats in a circle of the gazebo. A footer-sized call to the rabbit and chocolate warrants to send out the invitations and collect RSVPs. Twilight found herself, though, perplexed about something about Pinkie Pie. There was a certain something about her that had changed since they left Sweet Apple Acres. And Twilight was sitting on her haunches, rubbing her now stubble-free chin, watching Pinkie leap from table to table, placing party favors, plates of cookies, cakes, and streamers, when she realized what it was. One of the balloons in Pinkie's cutie mark was missing. Her right flank was decorated with only one balloon and a yellow balloon.
Pinkie,
She began tentatively. How did one tell a pony that their cutie mark was different on each flank?
what is it, Twilight? Something missing?
She asked. The question was so near the mark that Twilight stumbled mentally.
Your balloons. Oh, you're right, Twilight. This party needs balloons!
And before Twilight could utter another word, Pinkie twisted her head around, bit down on her left flank, and pulled off the yellow balloon. Twilight's jaw dropped as she watched Pinkie tie the blue string off onto one of the tables, the yellow balloon bobbing innocently above the cakes and muffins. Then Pinkie reached down and bite off another balloon.
Pinkie, please, stop!
Twilight gasped feebly. This was so far out of her league, so far out of her comfort zone, that she was struggling to find her breath.
Pinkie, if you keep this up, your cutie mark will...
But Pinkie had already pulled off a fifth balloon. Each of the 5 tables in front of the gazebo decorated with a balloon in a blue, yellow, blue sequence. Twilight rubbed her forearm on her eyes, blinking as well as to make sure she wasn't imagining it. No, she wasn't. Pinkie Pie had gleefully pulled off all 6 balloons in her cutie mark, given one to Apple Bloom to cheer her up, and used the other 5 to decorate a party.
Pinkie, your flank. It's blank.
Pinkie began to prong toward another table, giving Twilight an accidental view of her newly cutie markless flank, when Twilight felt a pair of hooves seizing her by the shoulders and spinning her around facing the gazebo to face the pony behind her. Pinkie Pie! Wait, what? Pinkie's eyes were wide, her teeth clenched.
Twilight, why weren't you helping with the party? It was your idea!
Her mind catching up with her eyes, Twilight pondered the physical impossibility of Pinkie Pie being in front of her, pronking aimlessly about, and behind her, spinning her around at the same time. She decided she'd worry about it later.
I just never did anything with a party before,
Twilight said evasively, glancing to Pinkie's flanks, looking at the tables behind her. Pinkie's flanks were once more adorned with 3 balloons, 1 yellow and 2 blue apiece. But there were still 5 balloons on the table behind Twilight, and no other sign that Pinkie could have been around the tables only 10 seconds prior. Pinkie seemed satisfied with Twilight's answer. She let Twilight go, smiling brightly.
Okie dokie dokie, then you can just go help receive the RSVPs.
There were exactly 12 yellow balloons and 23 blue balloons hanging above the tables when the partygoers began to arrive. Twilight decided she was not going to question how Pinkie somehow managed to find a new way to break the laws of common sense and physics every time she turned around. She had enough on her plate having to contend with ponies making her care about them, and the issue of everlasting night potentially wilting her parents. Even so, the scientists at Twilight Sparkle needed to know, what did these balloons feel like? Taking one in her Dwimmer shimmer, Twilight reached up and touched the blue balloon with her hoof. It was soft and fuzzy, like Pinky's coat. Noticing that Pinky was giving Twilight an odd look, she quickly rejoined the festivities. The party was, as far as Twilight was concerned, more of a success than her welcome party. She had several reasons to believe this. For one, there was no sense of pending urgency to prevent Nightmare Moon's return, as Nightmare Moon was already loosed upon Equestria. Secondly, the party was in Ponyville Square and not in a library, so the noise level was not necessarily a violation of protocol. Thirdly, there were no hot sauce bottles. Each of the families that she had met that day were present as well, as were the other 9 odd ponies of Ponyville. Rarity tried in vain to pretty up her parents' outfits, but there was only so much that her glitter spell could cover up their classic apparel. The Pinks were turning down any pay that any pony desired to make for the wares they had set up for consumption at this party. An Earth pony magnate named Filthy Rich was placing an order on Apple Family food products with Big Macintosh, while a pale pink filly at his feet, with a tiara for a cutie mark, matching the tiara on her head, was hounding him at his heels.
Dad!
Whined the filly, fussily brushing her pale purple and white streaked mane.
We've been buying Apple products too much. Does he know how much money Pit is to waste our money on their food?
Diver Tiara, don't be ridiculous.
Scowled Filthy, who preferred to be addressed as Mr. Rich.
I find them to be quite reliable business partners.
Reliable about my cutie mark?
Diamond Tiara Karen, shaking her flanks slightly. She took notice of Twilight, smirked, and approached Twilight, practically oozing with haughty self-absorption.
You must be the new mayor in town,
she said, with none of the nasty tone in her voice, and every degree of oily fawning that Twilight heard from all manner of salsa climbers back in Canterlot. Diamond Tiara took a shallow bow.
My name is Diamond Tiara, and my daddy, Mr. Rich, is the wealthiest pony in all of Ponyville.
A light gray filly, who had been standing by the stallion alongside Mr. Rich, cantered over. Her pale silver mane was braided in a ponytail to her right, and her cutie mark was of a silver spoon, with a bright pink mark at the top of the handle.
Silver Spoon,
Diamond Tiara said to the gray filly.
It's that new mare I was talking about. See, he's from Canterlot. Ooh,
said Silver Spoon, her purple eyes widening behind cyan-framed glasses.
She must have a lot of connect.
The pale pink hoofs shoved itself into Silver Spoon's mouth. Twilight narrowed her eyes slightly at this display. Diamond Tiara must have noticed, as she offered a nervous smile at the lavender unicorn.
Well, if there's anything you need, just ask me or my daddy,
Diamond Tiara said sweetly. Really? Twilight said, raising an eyebrow.
Oh, really?
Replied Silver Spoon, smiling brightly.
Her dad has lots of sorts of connections to all sorts of different businesses in different cities. But none in Canterlot.
Diamond Tiara sighed, her ears drooping.
All we have to deal with out here in this rude town are hicks like the apples and insane ponies like that Pinkie Pie.
Pinky is the big party planner around here, though, isn't she? Twilight asked, swallowing the bile rising up from her chest at the description of the Apple family as hicks. Didn't she throw you a cute tiara? Diamond Tiara hesitated.
Well, yeah, she did. Last week, actually. I suppose it was fine, but she's still crazy.
She cleared her throat.
Anyway, you have to know it better than any pony what it's like to deal with peasants like the apples. I mean, you were at their little reunion, weren't you?
It wasn't exactly little, Twilight said, trying to keep a level tone. But yes, I was there. Well, it's not too late for you, then,
Diamond Tiara said, pacing in front of Twilight now, her smile taking on a more sinister turn at the corners.
You can always switch sides. Sign a few deals with Daddy. You don't want to be sullying your reputation by consorting with the wrong sort.
Twilight's eyebrows narrowed, but before she could offer her answer, Apple Bloom trotted over to her.
Hey, Twilight, aren't you going to hire several more freighters?
Several things happened in that instant. Apple Bloom sighted Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon talking to Twilight. Took a step back sharply, her ears going back and teeth clenched. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon caught wind of Apple Bloom talking to Twilight, rounded on her with malicious glares. Twilight found herself taking a step forward. Diamond Tiara gave a devilish smirk.
You see what I'm talking about here, Twilight?
She said, with an accusing hoof pointed at Apple Bloom.
This filly's 10 years old, and she still hasn't got her cutie mark. Neither do 2 others in our class. One of them is a Pegasus pony who can't even fly. Silver Spoon has her cutie mark. I just got mine last week. It's all too clear what sort of company a Canterlot elite like you should be keeping.
At which point, Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon shared a special hoofshake, which involved bumping 4 forehoofs together high, then low, then dusty elbows of one each, then bumping their cutie mark flanks together to a sing-song chant of
Bump, rump, sugar lump, rump.
Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon looked back up at Twilight, smiling in what they must have hoped was an endearing fashion. Twilight ignored their looks and glanced at Apple Bloom, who was teary-eyed and sulking, biting her bottom lip to hold in what might have been a wail of sorrow. I know what company I should keep, and it's not yours. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon almost cheered, but realized that Twilight was talking to them. She was also leveling a glare at them that would have leveled a mountain if she had the power.
But, I'm the richest pony in Ponyville. My daddy's got connections. What does that filly have that I don't, other than a batty old grandma who couldn't even remember her own name?
I'll tell you what she has. Twilight kneeled down over the 2 bullies, who quailed under her intense glare. A heart, a loving family, the will to extend a helping hoof without expecting anything in turn.
But isn't it weird that she doesn't have a cutie mark yet? She's 10.
I was 10 when I got my cutie mark, Twilight growled, the same day I entered Queen Celestia's school for gifted unicorns. And I'll have you know that most of the fillies and colts who had entered already had their cutie marks. Diamond Tiara let out a high laugh, which caught the attention of many passers-by.
So you were a late bloomer? I'm surprised Celestia took you in as her student.
Twilight's eyes narrowed. Don't you dare talk down about Queen Celestia, she said, her voice sinking her rage.
What's going on here, Diamond Tiara?
Mr. Rich had trotted over, his deal with Big Mac finished. In an instant, Diamond Tiara started crying, blubbering into her father's leg.
Daddy, Queen Celestia's student was being mean to me. I was there, Mr. Rich,
Sour Silver Spoon.
She called Diamond Tiara a doo-doo-headed little nag.
Filthy Rich arched an eyebrow at his daughter and her best friend, then faced Twilight with a look of sad understanding.
What's your side of the story?
There are no sides to it, Daddy.
Diamond Tiara seemed to have forgotten she was supposed to be crying.
All I did was ask to be her friend, and she started yelling at me.
Your daughter was trying to kiss up to me, Mr. Rich, Twilight explained, causing Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon to shoot her murderous look. And I, having grown up at Canterlot amidst all sorts of hoof-lickers and brown-nosers, was able to spot a shallow attempt at flattery. And then she started to verbally assault the Apple family, especially Apple Bloom here. Apple Bloom nodded at Twilight's mention of her name, attempting to rub away the tears from said lashing.
But most ponies have their cutie marks by the time they're my age, Daddy.
The tiara-wearing bully said in defense.
Isn't it just wrong that she doesn't have hers by now?
Who cares if she's a blank flake? Skulu had appeared from Twilight, glowering at Diamond Tiara. It's not like that's a bad thing!
It means she's not special,
Diamond Tiara replied, clearly holding her tongue with her father behind her.
It means she's got potential,
said another voice, and Sweetie Belle appeared from Twilight's other side. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon gaped at the two new blank-fanged fillies that had appeared. Twilight, for her part, was a little relieved that ponies, the more of the proper race, had decided to stand against the bullies.
It means she can be great at anything, and she doesn't have to be being stuck up like you two,
Sweetie Belle said, with a surprisingly sharp tone. Diamond Tiara leveled a death glare at the three fillies, and Twilight, before snarling,
Of course you blank flanks and teacher's pet would team up together. I should have known a screw-up like you, or turned her parents into plants, would have...
Diggly Dazzle Witch!
bellowed Filthy Rich, causing his daughter to shrink down to her haunches, ears shriveling down. That he had used the name he had given her, rather than the appellations she gave to herself upon using her cutie mark, meant that she had well and truly screwed up.
I am withholding your allowance for a month for your check today.
But, Daddy...
No buts, Diamond Tiara! That's another week of lost allowance. You have been very rude to your classmates and an esteemed guest, the Queen's own disciple. Think about how you treat the less fortunate, and I'll reinstate your allowance in 5 weeks. 5 weeks! Now, get home!
He pointed off down the street, and Diamond Tiara trotted miserably off, glaring at any pony who looked at her.
Mr. Rich,
I'll be sure to let you know that your parents know that you took part in this. But my own Diamond holds the Manticore's share of the blame. You can go.
Silver Spoon returned to the party proceedings, brighter than Diamond Tiara, but with a lesser spring in her step.
I'm terribly sorry for my daughter's attitude,
Mr. Rich said to Twilight and Apple Bloom.
Ever since her mother left, she's been...
I understand, Twilight said lowly, looking at her hooves. I know that some ponies who've lost their parents can say things that hurt. Hurt bad.
You look like you understand all too well,
said Filthy Rich.
Hey, what's with all the long faces?
Came Piggy's high sing-song voice, bounding into the makeshift circle of Twilight, Apple Bloom, and Mr. Rich. Twilight realized that every pony at the party had stopped partying and was looking at them.
This is a party, right? Time to hang out with your friends and make out new ones.
Twilight pointed at Pinky, before smiling and trotting off to the punch bowl, which a mulberry earth pony mare was standing beside. Apple Bloom, Scootaloo, Sweetie Belle looked back and forth amongst each other.
Wanna go grab some apple fritters?
Apple Bloom offered.
Dewey!
Squeaked Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo excitedly. Hey, Apple Bloom, I know you just met these two, but trust me, I think they're going to be great friends. Twilight's facsimile sun had set, and was closing in on 10:30 at night when the party began to wind down. The mayor of Ponyville stood at the podium set before the doors of Town Hall, and clapped her hoof against the sounding block to get Ponyville's attention. Twilight vaguely noticed pinkish roots at the roots of the mayor's mane. "Fillies and Centercoats of Ponyville!" she began, once the pony's guards reached silence. 3 days ago, an ancient legend came to pass. A nightmare moon returned to our lawns, imprisoning our queen and darkening our queendom. Dark murmurs broke out amongst the populace. Now, to make sure that we receive the greater picture of what's going on here, I invite to the side Twilight Sparkle. Doing a double take at her name being called, Twilight looked around. Of course, no other pony had to be named Twilight Sparkle in Ponyville, and the looks that every pony else was giving her only confirmed that she was the mayor's addressee. "Go on, Twilight," whispered Spike,
standing at Twilight's side.
Next to Rarity as well.
He was nudging Twilight toward the podium. Reluctantly, first at a trot, then a canter, Twilight made her way through the parting crowd of ponies to the podium before Town Hall. The mayor, smiling encouragingly at Twilight, surrendered the podium to Twilight, and placed her hose nervously upon it. She became aware of the fact she was sweating, but she didn't dare to wipe it away. She had to appear resolute to these ponies, so they would not fear Nightmare. Ponies of Ponyville, she started. I'm Twilight Sparkle for Canterlot. We know! Called out Rainbow Dash from the crowd. Get on with it! Twilight cleared her throat irritably. Anyway, I am Queen Celestia's personal protege. I have learned many spells during my time in her tutelage. The sun that lit up Ponyville these past 3 days was the product of the Queen's healing agenda spell. Maybe she knew this day was coming. I don't know. I don't know what was on the Queen's mind the days and nights leading up to Nightmare Moon's return. But I do know this. If we want to stop Nightmare Moon once and for all, we'll need the 6 elements of harmony. Confused murmurs broke out. I know. I only just knew of them because of the high-level books I had access to in Canterlot. I can only assume that the elements are not well known outside of the particularly well-read. Not that I don't think you pony villagers don't read, Twilight added hastily, but the crowd continued to watch her patiently. She sighed. Great impression you're making on them, Twilight. It's just, even I don't understand the elements of harmony. I do know, though, that their magic cannot simply be limited to their physical vessels. Even though Nightmare Moon smashed the element stones, I'm positive they can be restored. The Queen has told me where I can find more information on the elements. In Canterlot! The crowd of ponies glanced as one up to the mountainside to the north, where Canterlot was situated in its glory. In the 3 days since Nightmare Moon has descended, the city seemed to undergo a radical transformation. From white and gold to deep blue and black, the sun and moon heraldry, simply with moon banners. The whole city seemed to have gone to the dark side. Don't be afraid, every pony, Twilight called out. I won't be going alone. 5 of your very own have volunteered to accompany me to Canterlot. If you 5 would kindly join me up here. Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Rarity, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie. The 5 trotted up, along with Spike. Once up on the tier with Twilight, they faced the crowd they had just left. Applejack gave a humble smile and doffed her Stetson. Rainbow Dash gave a cheeky grin and winked to the crowd. Rarity stuck a glamorous pose by hoisting up on her left leg to her barrel and flicking her mane with her right forehoof. Fluttershy hid her face behind her mane and struck down to her haunches. Pinkie hopped in several times, flipping upside down occasionally. Spike hopped up into Twilight's back. The crowd began to murmur amongst itself in confidence. Twilight could see a few smiles amongst the faces down there. At the crack of dawn tomorrow, we will depart for Canterlot to claim further information on the elements of harmony, so that we can use them to defeat Nightmare Moon and bring back the day! Twilight found herself shouting those last 4 words, and the whole of Ponyville cheered to the skies at her proclamation. Many were leaping into the air. Several Pegasi were doing loop-de-loops or barrel rolls in the air, and some unicorns were sending glimmer sparklers up into the air in celebration of the oncoming return of the sun. We've ignited the sparks of a full-blown rebellion, Applejack murmured.